大家好，我是中山大学中文系的莫加南老师。我们今天非常荣幸可以欢迎国立师范大学台语文学系的贺安娟老师到中山来访谈。今天的活动是我们国际汉学平台在中山所举办的系列访谈之一啦。我们国际汉学平台的重要的目标之一是要邀请呢我们台湾人文学界的第一流的知识分子南下访问中山、访问高雄，然后跟我们进行交流，讨论台湾的汉学，讨论台湾的人文研究，讨论台湾的学术的各种各样的问题啦。所以我们今天非常荣幸可以欢迎贺老师到高雄来。那今天的访谈的活动是可以说是双语的，我们会用英文跟中文进行交流所以我也会用英文做一个简单的介绍。Today we are truly honored to have Professor Anne Heylen from Taiwan Normal University's Department of Taiwan Culture, Languages, and Literatures to come down to the south, to come down to Kaohsiung, and to engage with us in this wonderful opportunity to talk, to think about collectively the questions of the humanities in Taiwan, the questions of Taiwanese sinology, the questions of Taiwanese studies. And we are very honored that she has come to visit with us today. And today's interview is part of our larger project that we are building here at Zhongshan called the Global Sinology Platform. And this platform is really, as the name suggests, a platform, a digital and an analog space where we can invite important scholars in the humanities down to Kaohsiung to give lectures, to put on events, to engage in dialogue with us, and to really think about whether it's sinology broadly defined, or whether it's Taiwan studies, or whether it's just the humanities in general in Taiwan, critical questions facing educators and humanists in Taiwan today. So we are very honored to have Anne. Anne, welcome.
Thank you, Mark. I'm very honored. I'm very happy. 我非常荣幸有这个机会，今天去高雄跟中山大学的学者的老师们联络，有这个机会，我们可以讨论台湾汉学、台湾研究的一些主题。
谢谢。Wonderful. And so I think we should just get right into our interview. And of course, I think anybody who knows about the history of Taiwan studies, both in Taiwan as well as a global practice, is familiar with Professor Anne Heylen and your work. And I thought we would first start with just talking a little bit about your own academic background. You've taught at Shida for 13 years. So that's a good bit of time. And so I thought before we talk about your academic career at Shida, we could first talk a little bit about your background, about your academic background. So you completed a PhD in Chinese Studies at Leuven University, the Department of Oriental and Slavonic Studies. And I just wanted to ask you, how did you get interested in doing a degree in Chinese and learning Chinese? How did you get into, I guess we would call it sinology?
Sinology. These are choices one makes. I mean, if I look back at my own personal trajectory there, it's kind of an interest in different languages and different alphabets. And it was actually the Chinese language, not so much in the beginning the Japanese language or even the Russian alphabet that interested me. And then it was at the age of like 15. And then I decided, okay, because I come from the Antwerp province, and they organized at one of the which is now the community colleges, they organized evening classes in Chinese. So I decided to enroll in an evening course for Chinese. This was while I was still in secondary education. So the last 2 years around the age of 16, 17. And this worked out, and then I went to the introduction days of the Department of Oriental Studies, as we were called to, and enrolled in the undergraduate, the bachelor program of Chinese studies, so sinology.
And during your undergraduate, what was that like to first start studying Chinese and really grapple with the language, and how did you enjoy that?
The program at the time, which was set up in Chinese studies in sinology, was not very old at Leuven University. It started, I think, only in the late 1970s or the early 80s. So the first 2 years we both had Chinese and Japanese, and then they changed the program. They kind of not renovated it, but improved it, and going more into direction of whether you focus on sinology or Japanese studies.
Right. So that's really interesting. So you have this sinological education, Chinese classics, classical Chinese, philosophy, philology, and the chance to study Japanese. And so how did you come to Taiwan as a field of inquiry?
Okay, the decision to come to Taiwan occurred in the third year. The first year of the undergraduate, because undergraduates was still the older system, not the bachelor of 3 years, but 4 years. So you have 2 years of the candidacy, basically, and then the license years, the final 2 years. And in the third year, we are then 1987. Okay. So the interest, of course, we all wanted to go to China, but it wasn't really practical in the mid-1980s to just enter the PRC.
So you were a student at NTNU's 国语中心, and now you're a full professor at NTNU. So you've come full circle.
I've come full circle, yeah.
国立师范台湾大学. That's amazing. And so, of course, your work, as everybody knows, who follow Taiwan studies, you have been interested in language for a long, long time. And we were talking yesterday that you actually did your undergraduate thesis on 胡适 and the Baihua movement in China. You're right. And then you're learning the language, you're in Taiwan, and then you set about on a course to do a PhD at Leuven, and you decided to continue to research these questions about the vernacular, about language, about modernity, nationalism, but in the Taiwan context. How did you come to your PhD topic? How did you come to that dissertation topic?
Interesting question.
Yeah.
It also goes back to the first visit I did in Taiwan in 1987, because we had, at the time, we still had to write a PA Lunwen, so, because there was no master program. It was a 4-year bachelor program and you could only graduate if you wrote, which we would now call maybe a master thesis, and also have an oral exam. Right. And initially I was interested in the Chinese Revolution, the Red Guards, you know. Because these are the fancy topics. If it's not this, then it's the minority. Right. So I went to talk to my supervisor at the time, whom we only had 2 professors. Right. And he said, but the Red Guard, think about it, you know. It's a little bit too difficult. 1966 Cultural Revolution. But you have this scholarship, you know, to go to Taiwan. Not scholarship, you have this summer trip. Think about it when you're over there. And the idea came here to do Husser, because I visited the Husser Memorial Hall at Academia Sinica. Yes. Okay, that's it. And then I've had many lunches there. So I bought a number of the works published by Husser, which were then republished here. And I spent a fair amount of time working on the PA Lunwen. To graduate, looking at the Baihua Wen Yun Tong, and this then kind of spurred my interest also with being here. I spent the summer of 1987, 4 months here, and tied in with Taiwan studies is that I actually left I flew out of Belgium on the 15th of July. And the 15th of July was the day when the martial law was lifted in 1987.
Wow.
So I am really early post-martial law generation.
Right.
Because I arrived on the 16th.
Yeah, I mean, you've grown up as a scholar with Taiwan in
with
the
Taiwan,
martial law, the democratization. You've experienced this. You've lived this.
I wasn't born on the 15th of July, but
I
came to Taiwan.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of amazing that relationship that you've had.
And this is all at the time I wasn't aware, at the time, because we were not really taught anything about the history of Taiwan, let alone the Japanese colonial period. And then coming here, the surprise was, but people here, they don't speak Mandarin, Street life, although this is like early lifting martial law, but Taiwanese was still spoken on the street in this is Taigi. So.
And you had written your undergraduate dissertation, or 毕业论文 on 胡适. And then you come to deciding, well, what are you going to do your PhD research on? And you decide to continue to think about language historically, but this time in Taiwan, right?
And then of course automatically you come to the Japanese colonial period.
Right.
So I kind of transplanted the Baihuawen Untong, what happened to Usu Untong on the mainland, see what was happening in those years here in Taiwan. I did most of the research at the time in the mid-1990s at Todai, because I had a postgraduate research grant for 1 year, but I had been able to go to Tokyo the year before on like short-term visit. And slowly gathering research materials, and then the 1 year I was at Todai, I took classes with one of the Japanese leading professors on Taiwan studies, Professor Masahiro Wakabayashi.
Okay.
So Rolin Zhenzang, Lao Shi, his students, and so a number of the classmates are currently all professors at the different Taiwan studies department. At the Taiwan University, like Chen Beifeng, He Yilin. So we all kind of knew each other. We met at Todai, we met in Japan in the mid-1990s.
Yeah, and that's so fascinating, right? Those intellectual networks that work through Japan.
And you stay in touch with them, and then afterwards coming back here to Taiwan, being invited to come to Shida. So it's kind of you catch on.
Yeah, and you're now all major figures in Taiwan studies.
So we can invite each other for talks.
And you
know each other's research and pass their research on to our students.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's the core of people of actually the first generation of Taiwanese academics who had who were either studying in the United States, Europe, or Japan, with the liberalization and democratization of Taiwan society, coming back to Taiwan and having these positions to focus solely on the expansion of Taiwan studies.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, there was this field of Taiwan studies has grown with the liberalization of Taiwanese society, and we'll talk about that. But I just wanted to mention a great story you were telling me at dinner last night, that the first time you looked at the Taiwan Minbao was at Todai in the library, and you photocopied the actually original Taiwan Minbao. I mean, now we have digital...
The paper version.
The paper version, And I mean, that must have been such an amazing experience to be in Japan, thinking about Taiwan, the experience of Taiwan's Japanese colonial era, the colonial period, and photocopying these, really, really just valuable, essential sources to understand that era in Todai University. And I mean, that must have been such a...
And then sending it in boxes to Taiwan.
Right. Sending it back to Taiwan.
Because after the grant was finished, the scholarship was finished, I decided to come to Taiwan. Right. Because it was a rather generous scholarship, so I saved a little bit.
Right.
And 3 more months in Taiwan, and decided to stay on, apply for grants here. Come with the Ritchie Institute, and then had the opportunity to actually write the draft of my PhD.
Okay, right. So you wrote a draft of your PhD in
that's what I did here. So the initial research I did in Japan. I gathered the sources and photocopied most of it. then send it all over here and continued here.
Yeah, and that's interesting that at Leuven, from your undergraduate onward, you were learning Japanese and Chinese, and that really prepared you to do Taiwan studies. So it's quite interesting that kind of this broad sinological training where you're learning these two major East Asian languages, really converge, right, in Taiwan.
And it actually helps explaining Taiwan society. It does help. Because when you come with a background which doesn't have the notion of, let's say, the Confucian classics, the classical element of Chinese studies, it all comes at an expense, because, for instance, we didn't get any training in political science projects, political science courses, or communication courses. So it was really, truly philology.
It was truly sinology.
It helps. It has its advantages, but it also has its drawbacks, especially today, where we all need to know more about identity formation, nationalism, and these courses, those theoretical foundations you don't get in the traditional programs. But that's now all changed.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you write your dissertation, and then this becomes, will eventually become the book that you published in later on, called Japanese Models, Chinese Culture, and the Dilemma of Taiwanese Language Reform, which when I teach Taiwan Baihua Yundong, when I teach the Taiwan Huawen debates, I use your book almost every semester, and it's, I think it's really, the best English language work on this topic. And you actually went through Naiyin Zazhi, the Voice of the South.
Yes, that one.
I've read Naiyin. It's not easy to read. There's
no.
classical Chinese, there's Taiwanese,
and
there's
actually
Japanese.
I did all that research in the Taiwan Fengguan, and at the time the Taiwan Fengguan was still at Padolu. It was still at Taipei Koji Dashui. Not the one at Jilonglu, but the one at Padolu, so opposite where the computer market is.
Right. Yes.
But they were already storing into boxes because they were on the way to to go to where they are currently now in Banqiao. And the other part of my research I did at Wusalian Jijinghui. The Wusalian Foundation at Nanjing Tonglu. Because they were one of the first foundations who started compiling and documenting the Japanese colonial period. So the Hui Ilus, the recollections of the Taiwanese elite during the Japanese colonial period. Also because of Wusalian Maswan himself. So a number, and then the diary, the selected works published by Taipei Huo. They were published by Wusalian Jijinghui. So actually, I was able to work with his diary, which I also included in the thesis and further developed into for the monograph. Before it came out. Right. Just like the last minute.
That's wonderful, So, and you really got to get a sense of how heterogeneous that period was. There was, linguistic standardization had not taken place yet, right? So they're actively experimenting and thinking about, how do we unify voice and speech in a multilingual environment, multiphonic environment, and your book, of course, really talks about
and then the brief interview I did with Wu Shouli. So Wu Shouli, because Wu Shouli passed away, I think, in 2008, but I interviewed him a few times in 2000. Because he was also one of these leading figures working on Taiwan, on Taiki and the Minnan. And
so now I'd love to move the conversation a bit towards the institutional work you've done in Taiwan, because one of the things about your career is I really believe that you are an institution builder. You have built institutions both in Taiwan and abroad. But let's first talk about, so in 2008, you get hired by the Department of Taiwan Culture, Languages, and Literature.
At the time, we were still a graduate institute.
So at the time, you were still a graduate institute. And you have done many years of research on Taiwan, on Taiwanese languages, culture, history, and you get hired by a major Taiwanese university in Taipei, it must have been something like, a dream come true to be able to teach and work in Taiwan as a professor.
That's true, Mark. Actually, it's not many of us have the opportunity or are so lucky to be able to continue the research you've done for your doctoral dissertation and to bring this actually into practice and teach about it and expand on it and continue building your research career using the PhD topic. And because it's doing Taiwan studies, it's more an exception than the rule. Yeah. The majority of us who focus on a PhD, whose PhD topics focus on Taiwan, not necessarily end up teaching Taiwan, or if they can cover Taiwan, it's part of a survey course or part of a history course where they touch upon the history or the politics or so. So it's not focus, only doing Taiwan. Right. Sure, yeah, that was a very nice opportunity given to me.
And you must have had, at that time, just lots of enthusiasm and energy, because in 2009, you were asked to be the founding director, you were invited to be the founding director of the International Taiwan Studies Center, the 国际台湾研究中心, which is associated with, at that time it was a institute, right?
The Graduate Institute.
The Graduate Institute, which later became your department. And so you become, within the span of 2 years, not just a professor teaching Taiwan studies, but now a director of a major international center. And how did you go about building that center and helping Shida internationalize?
Okay, the establishment of the 国际台湾研究中心, and actually after 3 years we had to change the name in order to continue because it's related to the rather particular setup. So the initial idea of the chair of the Graduate Institute of Taiwan Culture, Languages and Literature, Li Qin-an, his idea was to establish a Taiwan Shui Yuan, so a Taiwan college within NTNU. Part of the requirements with the application for a Taiwan Shui Yuan was also a center. So the center application was approved, and the Taiwan Shui Yuan application did not concretize. It didn't concretize for the other universities either. I mean, politics came into play again and so on. We don't need to go into detail there, but the center was established and set up, and this was around the time when I was hired. So Li Qin-an asked me politely, Anne, we have this opportunity also for you. You have your international background, because I met Li Qin-an through the NATSA conference, to which we will come later. And then the first year we were provided with funding and an office to share with Taishuso. The Graduate Institute of Taiwan History at NTNU, but then it's like, okay, it falls back onto your own initiatives. Yeah. You are the director, you steer the center. Right. If you want to have 15 people working with you, or it's going to be a one-man show, it's all up to you. Right. And so at the time, of course, sure. I mean, I was just hired. You get a support network. You have a lot of energy. Right. You use all your Saturdays and your Sundays, and finally, you are coming from Europe back to Taiwan. You have your network in Europe and United States, mainly Europe. You have this opportunity as director of the center to apply for additional funding. So we organized workshops, graduate student workshops with the Masaryk University at Brno in Czech Republic. We set up a number of lecture series, and the lecture series were then invited mainly MOFA scholars, so the Ministry of Foreign Affairs program on the Taiwan Fellowship, with researchers working on Taiwan. They needed a letter of endorsement, and that's where, of course, the network and your contacts come in. So we asked them to give a couple of lectures. We set up more workshops. In 2010, we organized the first collaborative conference of the East Asian Association of Popular Culture, which was in collaboration with my colleague in Zhuang Jia-in, who was invited and asked by the president of the American Popular Culture Association. His name escapes me at the moment, but I'll come back to it, to why not organize a popular culture conference on East Asia in Taiwan. So we worked together in at the department, me at the center, then also started to join the center. And in September 2010 we had our first, we had about 100 participants, 75 speakers coming from Europe, United States, Japan, all on East Asian popular culture.
Right.
We continued popular culture conferences, and this was then after 10 years when I asked to take some leave.
Right.
The last big conference, unfortunately, we had the COVID, so we had to do most of it online.
Right.
But by then we entered also a partnership with Kyushu University in Fukuoka.
Right.
Because they also have a Taiwan Studies program, which is led by Dr. Edward Vickers.
Right.
One of the other activities we organized was, if it was not conferences organized in Taiwan and held in Taiwan, then applying for funding with Ministry of Education or the Kojipu to organize workshops, 1 week workshops, because all this either has to take place during the summer or the winter break or during the semester. And the semester breaks are different in the European countries as well. They have Easter, they have Christmas.
Right, yes. You have to negotiate all this.
They don't have Chinese New Year, they don't have the Lunar New Year.
Right.
And what I still need to mention too is the 1 week workshop on documentaries. Taiwan documentaries with the team Beyond Beauty, with Dr. Astrid Lipinski, who is who leads the Taiwan Studies program at the University of Vienna.
Right.
So it's actually all people, the International Taiwan Studies Center works together with other Taiwan Studies programs or centers set up in different countries. And since I am from Europe, I have the European network that I can bring with me. The focus was much more towards Europe rather than United States, and then later came in Japan.
Yeah, so you've done a lot. That sounds like a lot. I mean, that's a lot of...
The Spanish archaeologists.
Oh, that's right.
I'd like to mention these two, because it's not everyone who is focused, who has a focus or a mainstay on Taiwan studies. So we also brought in, I mean, we didn't bring in, it was, I was contacted by one of the Spanish archaeologists who had a research grant as a team to come and do excavations in Hepingtao, so, and where they actually laid bare the fundaments of one of the Spanish churches built there. So in that sense it was focused on Taiwan, but also people who initially were not related, did not come from an East Asian studies fields, because they are archaeologists actually working on Fiji and Melanesia and other parts of the world, and finding their way through migration history into Taiwan.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and we are at Zhongshan, of course, setting up this platform. It's not even a center; it's just a small little platform dedicated to sinology and international or global terms. I can only imagine what running the center for 10 years. And I wanted to kind of ask, given all of the work that you did with the center to help your department internationalize and to build, as you say, this international community through your center, to draw on those relationships with European scholars, and how did you balance your work as the director of a center, as well as the need to publish your monograph, to be a publishing academic, as well as a teacher, to teach, as we know, 2-3 classes a semester in the Taiwanese system? How could you balance all of that?
It means you work all the time.
Yeah.
You have to
basically the short story.
You have to economize on your social life.
Right.
But then social life too, because you have as the center you are as a center you reach out to the community out there, the foreign community. So you have the scholars coming in for a couple of months here, a number of weeks. So your social life is actually actually, your social life is also an extension of your academic life.
Right.
So
yes.
the first couple of years, it's kind of another foreign scholar is coming. We
Yeah.
can go for a dinner. You
Yeah.
know, we can have some time together. They are based in Tainan. I can also go see them in Tainan and look at their excavations, referring to the Spanish team who were based partly the north, partly the south. So it's that's where the center actually gave an opportunity to also combine the academic work with the social life.
Yeah, and that's something we are trying to do with this platform. That our academic work, our research, the academic and intellectual interests that we have, the concerns we have regarding history, society, language, is also linked to our lives, right? Like academic life has to be connected to a social life. It has to be connected to a spiritual life, and it has to be about some kind of community, right?
And you may also include the students. Like for instance, the workshop we organized with the postgraduate workshop, we had 2 of them, and the second one, actually Tanya came with 7 of the students from Masaryk on a 2-week workshop, internship we can't say, but so we organized 1-week workshop, then we all went to Tainan.
Right.
And we visited the Literature Museum, the Yeshetao Museum.
Right.
So these are opportunities, activities as a person by yourself you wouldn't necessarily do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And you bring in your students, because then your students have the opportunity to practice their English, and the Czech students have the opportunity to work on their Chinese. So it's like one big happy family.
Right. Yeah. And this is what one of the things I think that foreign academics who work in Taiwan studies or sinology in general, I mean, we're bridges. We have to be bridges to the
but you can't do this endlessly, and that's where I say I've been now active as the director for 10 years. It was a lot of the initiatives, the money I was applying for through my own research and my interests working with. So now it's time for the new director.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to mention, of course, and discuss, you're not just an institution builder here in Taiwan, you have also built institutions connected to Taiwan studies internationally. And that's, I think, one of the really amazing things about your career is that you've made this local contribution to your university, but you're also one of the founding members of the European Association of Taiwan Studies. And of course, for all young graduate students, young scholars in the field, we all know in the international space, EATS in Europe and NATSA in North America, the North American Taiwan Studies Association. So I think to be one of the founding members, I mean, that's a really special thing. I mean, you've created an institution that has gone on for 19 years. You're in your 19th year now.
This year.
And I just wanted to ask, how did EATS come about? How did you decide with your colleagues to found this organization? And what was that process like?
Okay, the EATS actually grew out of NATSA, so to speak, that the founding members of EATS, we actually all met in the United States at the NATSA conferences, because this was in the late 1990s, the only opportunity actually for people working specifically on Taiwan to have a platform, a conference where everyone was talking about Taiwan only. And so the founding members, including David Vell from SOAS, we also had Stefan Korkuf, and Henning Kleuters, and we had a few more. But this was like the crowd. We either met here before or we met in the States for the first time at the NATSA conference. And the first time I went was in 2001 to Seattle, the University of Washington. 2002, there I met Henning in, we don't necessarily have to take all this drawback. So the European founders of the European Association of Taiwan Studies, we met in United States at the North American Taiwan Studies Association conference. And there grew the idea, do we need to fly every year from Europe, or whether we were still doing research in Taiwan or happened to be in Taiwan because the NATSA conferences were usually at the end of June. Do we need to fly all the way? Why can't we not establish something in Europe? Right. And at the time, so was Professor Bob Ash, and David Fell. They had funding with CCK. Right. And in 2004, we organized our first, the inaugural European Association of Taiwan Studies at London. We were about, I think, 50 people, and it was like half-half. No, the majority were actually European-based, either Taiwan scholars, students studying in Europe, or Europeans, and here and there someone flying in from United States, but it was the European mainstay. And the second year, in 2005, Henning Kleuter organized in Bochum. At the time I also had my postdoc at Ruhr University in Bochum. 2006 we went to France with Stéphane Corcuff, Fiorella Alliot, Jean-Pierre Cabestan. 2007 we went to Stockholm with Masako Ikegami. Then followed Prague, Madrid, and so on.
Amazing.
So in 2010, because the first couple of years we were kind of just organizing a conference, there was funding, but we were not institutionalized. And then slowly the idea grew. If we want to have a membership, if we want to maybe one day become less dependent on all the sponsors, or at least also works toward, also NATSA set up as an association. And the partner stepping forward was the Karl Eberhardt University in Tübingen, led by Dr. Günther Schubert, who also in 2008, thanks to funding from Taiwan, was able to set up the ERCCT, the European Research Center for Contemporary Taiwan Studies, where Stefan Breik is currently extremely very active. He's also with EATS, because you set up an association he's related to EATS as member. If you set up an association, the institutionalization requires that you are officially registered with the notary. That provides you a banking account, which then gives you the business aspect of running an association. And Tübingen was also, we did some research, because every European country has different regulations. It was a little bit more complicated in France. Then we didn't know what would be happening with the UK, because the UK uses pounds and Europe uses euros. So that's where
complicated.
Belgium was too confusing, and at the time we didn't have anyone in Belgium either who could step forward, because I was back over here. So Germany was the option, and we also had a fair number of German scholars working on Taiwanese literature and Taiwanese politics, cross-strait relations. So that's why we went for Tübingen, and since then we continue having our faithful sponsors. And now a number of external activities, all related to the conference, but the provision of small research grants, library grants. The membership has increased too, whereas initially it was mainly, as I come to say, those based in Europe. Now it's half-half.
I remember the first time we met, I think it was at a dinner.
In the Muslim restaurant, the halal restaurant.
No, the Indian restaurant.
The Kunming restaurant.
It was a Kunming, and Daryl Sturck connected us, right? I remember you came in and you said, "Don't forget, eats, the conference, everybody join. I said, okay, better join." They had that energy. We want this platform to do is we want to bring people together across these divides, whether we call it the Zhonghua Pai and the Taiwan Pai, whether we talk about, Zhonghua Pai and Buntu Pai. But I think in Taiwan, we have to have some dialogue, right? And you've lived this history. You've lived the institutionalization of Taiwan studies, and you were here in 1997. I mean, you saw the last bit of a kind of martial law Taiwan. Do you have any thoughts on how we can have that conversation between sinology in Taiwan and Taiwan studies?
I guess it's a matter of having to, on both sides, to kind of open up. There is definitely room for dialogue. Yeah. That's a fact. But it takes time in the sense that when we look at like the Hanshui and the Zhongwenxi, the Guowenxi, those departments, they have the hegemony. Mm-hmm. It's the top-down, basically, who are tied in very closely with the entire educational structure in Taiwan. And then you have the rise of the ascendance of the Taiwan studies, which is like bottom-up, basically. It's much more grassroots. Yeah. A lot of conflict and confrontation happened between, and the polarization that Taiwanese society characterizes on the political level equally existed throughout society. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also in the academic world. The 1980s, then the 1980s, definitely mid-1980s, were the Zhongguo Yishir and the Taiwan Yishir, the Yishir Wenzan. Mm-hmm. So all these, it is within this climate of contestation and conflict, actually, that Taiwan studies rises up, and the hegemony, the orthodox representation, the Hanshui has to look to, and of course they don't want to yield their authority and their power. That's one aspect. I think a second aspect we also have to take into account is that mentality change and generational change. Generations, it takes time to adjust. And the métier, the office, the profession of a university professor in Taiwan is very well respected. Yeah. We have absolutely no difficulties retreating to our own ivory tower and leading our life. Yeah. And if one has been professor for 20, 30, 40 years, leading this kind of life of seclusion with the red carpet being rolled open each time you come out of the door, so to speak, having this full authority also over your students, because there is the teacher-student relationship, all in the Confucian tradition and so on. And then all at once you have to you have to practice in the Shuo Guowen and have the Biao Zun fine, okay, whether you had to learn this and forsake your Taigi accent which you were speaking with your grandparents and your parents, or whether you were a migrant family coming from where you were migrating, coming with the nationalists from any province on the mainland. All this kind of shapes your personality too, and your outlook, and how to secure your position in society, in the educational structure. Also adding that Taiwan there is the element of security, the Anchuengan here, too, with the big neighbor over there. Right. So yielding some of this power, this authority, and this mentality change doesn't come easily. Does that mean that that Taiwan studies has to overtake the China studies? No, not necessarily. That's a completely different topic we don't really have to abort in the coming 10 minutes. But what I'd like to focus or bring out a little bit more here is that to what extent is it possible for, let's say, the Hanshui to take peace with the fact that they are the classical studies, and open up to find there is this contextualization of cinema studies, because Taiwan studies is characterized by area studies. We study identity, we study identity politics, we study cinema, we study gender relations, we study, of course, there is also literature. Then there is the whole linguistic aspect and the socio-linguistics involved, which then bring in the different languages. From Hakka, we have Taigi, we also have increasingly the Formosan, the Austronesian languages. To what extent is actually the Guowenshi, the Zhongwenshi, the Hanshui, are they dealing with these two? Yeah. So this is one point. Secondly, there is the ideological element as well. Do we position the Taiwan literature, the Gudi and Wanshui? Is it the Gudi and Wanshui or the literature from the 50s and the 60s? How much space? How do we interpret? It's all about interpretation. The Xiangtu Wanshui, do we still somehow put the Xiangtu Wanshui as one part of, or is it the Xiangtu Wanshui representative of the Zhu Tixing? So all these are ideological elements that are for especially the older generation. It's still floating up there in the air. Whereas the older generation who comes out of the grassroots, the Taigi, the activism, they are equally on an extreme line. We're talking about it's like two ends of the one spectrum. Now, I'd like to finish to end my reply here with the fact, with an observation that to teach, as we currently can do, there are programs of Taiwan studies, we teach Taiwan studies. This has not come overnight, and this is still in the process of expansion. Because let's say 10 years ago, who would be able to teach a completely informative course on the Xiangtu Wanshui, for example? Because Taiwan history, Taiwan societal development was not taught in the secondary schools and at the universities. So it takes an incubation period. And we actually just coming out of that incubation period where it's a lot of contestation from different camps, and the room for dialogue is definitely there, but it's up to a younger generation who can both kind of let go a little bit and put some water in some wine.
And that's part of what we're trying to do, think of sinology in this open and plural way, in this enabling way.
But it's kind of opening up. It's the same with accepting the language and the dialect kind of discussion. It's on the same kind of also opening up of the Mandarin speakers, the inclusivity of Taigi and the other local languages at the national level.
And this is, as you said, it's a process.
But once we have something, we want to hold on to it.
Yes, absolutely.
It's so hard to.
Absolutely. And as we know, institutional resources are scarce. And so actually this leads into one of the final questions I wanted to ask, which is the future of Taiwan studies. You have lived through as you said, this incubation period, this building, this institution building period. What gives you hope for Taiwan studies, and what are some of your concerns about maybe the challenges that the field is facing?
The hope for Taiwan studies, sure, we can bring that to present day, because of the whole COVID situation. Taiwan gets being put in a better spotlight and attains more visibility, and the international scene, that's one. So there will be more interest also from students at the same time, like for instance, is it the Stanford Academy is coming back to Taiwan, because I think they left.
They're going to Taiwan. They left the mainland.
And they're coming back. So Taiwan is this democracy which is open, which doesn't have strings attached to it because we give you money, as it is the case in the PRC. There is hope for a bigger interest, an academic interest also in the different European universities, but to date Taiwan studies is still rather the exception than the rule. The challenges I would put more in the direction of the need to increase, to pay a little bit more attention in, rather than looking at Taiwan only, or the Taiwan cross-strait relation, and to discuss or engage in a debate that is more global. So where the Taiwan and whatever policies, political developments, social trends engages with what is happening outside of Taiwan, outside of the PRC, outside of Asia, links with the wider world. So that comparative perspective. I actually had that brief discussion with one of the German scholars who was here earlier in the year. He mentioned on this. He said, "Look, I think this is maybe one way where Taiwan research and also the conferences, the topics of the conference, whether they are in Taiwan or outside of Taiwan, could do a little bit more homework. Let's put it this way." To reply to this, what I can observe from the years being here and partaking all these international conferences and the network outside it takes time to build up a vocabulary in English, because we are speaking now Taiwan, visibility outside of Taiwan, which implies that we will be using different languages and not only Mandarin. It is already a big task setting the vocabulary, call it and codifying the vocabulary, how to talk about Taiwan, the Tsuhui with the specificity, but it also needs to be done in English and French and German and Japanese and other languages, and that takes time. And you only build that vocabulary through going through conferences and having publications and making the students, whether they are European American students or Taiwanese students or Japanese students, speaking up about Taiwan using the right vocabulary, and that takes time. And once you master that vocabulary, then you can link that vocabulary and the network to a wider network and bringing the vocabulary of other fields and make comparisons. But first you need to feel confident in talking about the fact that Taiwan went through this period of Japanese colonization, that there was a martial law, that the one-party state was not particularly doing good or bad things. You know, it takes also courage.
Yeah, absolutely.
To speak up and use these words and say this in public. And once you feel confident with this, then you can move on to the next step, and then would then be like reaching out and making it putting it in a broader perspective. And I guess this is also why the reasons why currently in let's say the example of the Western world, where we are so much struggling with particular social issues regarding ethnicity now has become race. So it's also for the long time, if something you cannot talk about it, you cannot write about it, you can't practice, you can't voice it, how do you expect within 10 years time to be fluent in it?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to end our discussion today because precisely one of, as you mentioned, one of the challenges of the Taiwan Studies faces is how, as the field builds, how do you make those larger international, transnational, global connections and conversations in a way that's not just always looking within, always looking in Taiwan, because Taiwan ultimately, we are an island in the middle of a larger East Asian world, in the middle of a larger global world. And so how do you have those conversations, place Taiwan within a larger regional and global history? And one of the things that you've done with the center is you've tried to connect Taiwan to East Asia through popular culture. And so you are also, along with being the director of the center and a professor and publishing many articles, you are also the editor of the East Asian Journal of Popular Culture. And that is one way that you've connected Taiwan studies to a larger regional history, particularly through popular culture products. So I just wanted to ask a little bit about that as kind of a good case study of precisely of keeping that conversation becoming broader and broader and broader, and not having Taiwan studies just simply become too introverted or too navel gazing.
Navel gazing. The popular culture adventure. I don't come from, as a sinologist, we never had a course on popular culture and the McDonaldization of it was as I mentioned with the center, one of the first conferences we did together with the department. And the idea then was presented by In. Like we should have a journal too. And I had experience with, so my popular culture venture actually comes through my interest and my experience with the publishing world. Oh, okay. I was asked this goes back to 2004, to be the associate editor of the International Journal of Asia Pacific Studies, set up by Dr. Kerkin Oy in Saint Malaysia University in Penang. And then the popular culture, East Asia popular culture opportunity came up, and having that experience from how to be involved in journal paper submissions, reviewing processes. I said, okay, fine, I will lend my expertise there to the setup of an East Asian Journal of Popular Culture. We went to the European Association of Popular Culture, who had their conference in London in 2013. And in 2013, I participated in the European Association of Popular Culture, together with a panel of some of the presenters who had come to Taiwan for the first popular culture conference here. And it happened actually over lunch, where one of the New Zealand participants said, if you guys don't quickly go and set up some journal with East Asia, pop cans, popular culture of Australia and New Zealand will grab that chance. Within 15 minutes, we went to look for the publisher at Intellect, because that's the publishing house, and they said, okay, we give you the green light when you get back to Taipei, because sort out the contact with the founder of Intellect. And that's how we set up the journal. Within 5 years, it's hard work. It's not like the departmental journals here at Taiwan universities where everybody takes turns. A journal is successful because it's the people who put all the effort and the commitment and steer the direction of the journal. Now, since it's East Asian popular culture, so the majority of the papers are still kind of defined by papers from related to Japan. We're bringing in Korea, increasingly also a lot of cinema, gender studies, and the Taiwan papers kind of fit in, and at the same time, it teaches me to not to stay within Taiwan, but also put what are the interesting topics about Taiwan culture, society, literature that fit in that broader East Asian cultural scene, because we are not a journal of Taiwan studies. So we can actually engage with the blue and the green debate, because research, we all have to be very objective, and there is deontology and so on, but political streams, they somehow keep floating in back and forth. But with East Asian Journal of Popular Culture, so we have papers on Japan, papers on Taiwan, papers on China, on Hong Kong, and that's kind of the antidote, let's say it this way. I can finalize it like the antidote by being in Taiwan, being constantly immersed by the Taiwan field, and in the end you go blind to it. And this kind of keeps my eyes open.
Keeps you open to a different, a broader community. That's wonderful, and it's wonderfully put. Well, and I think we've covered your academic background, your institution building, your research, your thoughts on Taiwan studies. Thank you so much for visiting with us today.
Thank you, Mark, for giving me this opportunity to be here.
It's so much fun. It's so much fun, and we will have to have you back soon. And I think we can continue this conversation through our platform and through the center at Shida, and all kinds of. I already am thinking of all kinds of great collaborations. So I think we can leave it there. But I want to thank you very much.
Thank you too as well. It was great being here.